The hum of a troubled ship fills the space, vibrations running through its hull as it drifts in the void. A message flashes across the screen, a beacon of doom. Distress signal. Galactic Fleet Commander lost. The echo of the message rumbles through the cold silence, reverberating through Marcus Steele's mind. A chill settles over the crew as they gather around the bridge, but all Marcus can do is stare at the screen in disbelief. His mind races, trying to make sense of the impossible. The image of the doomed fleet haunts him, a ghost of the past he can never escape. How could this happen? Marcus murmurs as Callie, his second-in-command, steps forward to break the tension. "We need to get to the source," she says firmly, her voice filled with quiet urgency. Marcus nods, though his heart sinks. He knows what this means. His past, and the truth behind the destruction of the fleet, is catching up with him. The distress signal is still blinking. Marcus can feel the weight of it pressing on his chest, the realization sinking in. This is bigger than just a lost fleet. "This could be the start of something much worse," Callie says, her voice tight. Marcus turns to her, his expression grim. "I know," he mutters. The sudden silence on the bridge feels suffocating. Callie's eyes flick to the tactical screen, where encrypted coordinates flicker. The coordinates are pointing to a remote sector. "We can't avoid it, Marcus. If we don't go, we may never get another chance." Marcus sighs, rubbing his temple as his mind races. The ghost of his past weighs on him, but there's no time to dwell. He knows what must be done. With a deep breath, he presses the navigation button. "Set a course," he commands. As the ship lurches forward, a quiet tension fills the air. As the ship moves through the vast expanse, Marcus finds himself staring out of the cockpit window, lost in thought. His mind races with memories of the past, his old crew, the battles, the mistakes that led them here. "I never wanted this," Marcus whispers, his voice barely audible. Callie, noticing his distress, steps closer. "We don't always get to choose, Marcus. But you're not alone in this," she says softly. He meets her eyes, and for a brief moment, there's a flicker of hope. But it quickly fades, replaced by the gravity of their mission. A deep breath escapes him as the ship's engines hum in the background. "I have to make things right," he finally says. Callie nods. "We all do." The ship flies deeper into the darkness, the unknown ahead, but they're moving forward together. The ship's artificial gravity system hums softly, and for a moment it feels like everything is normal again. But the calm is fleeting. A shrill alarm cuts through the stillness, and the tactical screen flashes red. "We've been targeted," Callie exclaims, her voice tight. Marcus whips around, his eyes scanning the screen. "Who's out there?" he demands. The screen shows a hostile vessel, a warship, closing in fast. "It's the betrayer's ship," Callie murmurs. Marcus' heart skips a beat. The betrayer had once been one of his closest allies, but betrayal had twisted him into a ruthless enemy. "Brace for impact," Marcus commands, his voice low and steely. As the ship veers to the side, the sound of laser fire echoes in the distance. The battle for survival has begun. The warship looms closer, its guns charging. "We need to make a run for it," Callie urges, her voice filled with urgency. But Marcus doesn't move. His mind is racing, calculating their next move. The betrayer's ship is no ordinary vessel. It's armed to the teeth, and Marcus knows that escape won't be easy. "We can't outrun them," he says quietly. He reaches for the ship's weapons console. "We'll have to fight." Callie looks at him, her face a mixture of fear and respect. "Are you sure?" she asks. Marcus takes a deep breath, his fingers steadying on the console. "We don't have a choice," he replies. As the weapon systems activate, Marcus's mind flashes back to the day the betrayer turned on him, betrayed everything they had fought for. Now, it's time for payback. The ship lurches violently as Marcus grips the console, trying to maintain control. Callie looks out the cockpit window, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. "We're being pulled off course," she says, her voice tense. Marcus curses under his breath. "That's impossible," No one should be able to track us this deep into the sector. His fingers fly across the console, desperate to understand what's happening. The ship systems flash warnings, but there's no time to process them. It's the betrayer, Marcus says, his voice low with realization. He's ahead of us, waiting to trap us. Callie glances back at him, her expression a mixture of fear and resolve. Then we make sure he doesn't get the upper hand. Marcus nods grimly, his mind already calculating their next move. The tension between them is palpable as the ship continues to fight the pull, veering dangerously toward an unknown fate. Marcus glances at the tactical screen, his eyes scanning the readout. There's a gravity well ahead, he murmurs, his mind racing. It's a trap. Callie steps forward, looking over his shoulder. We can't avoid it. We'll be sucked in if we don't do something fast. The urgency in her voice pushes Marcus to act. We'll need to override the navigation system manually, he says, his hands moving quickly across the console. Callie watches, her gaze focused but anxious. You've done this before, she says, trying to reassure him. This isn't the same, Marcus replies, his voice low. He takes a deep breath, his mind momentarily drifting back to the time he was in charge of operations, when everything felt easier. But that was before the betrayer's betrayal. The pull of the gravity well grows stronger, and Marcus feels the weight of his past mistakes bearing down on him. Hold on, he warns, his fingers dancing across the manual overrides. The ship shudders again, the hull creaking under the strain. The lights flicker once more before stabilizing, and the sudden silence that follows is suffocating. Marcus exhales slowly, wiping the sweat from his brow. We made it past the gravity well, he says quietly, though his voice lacks the relief it should have. Callie steps up to the console, examining the ship's status. For now, she replies. The calm doesn't last long. A blaring alarm pierces the silence, and the tactical screen flashes with an incoming message. Marcus' heart skips a beat as he reads the words. Betrayer has activated a secondary trap, he mutters. Callie looks up, her face pale. How much time do we have? She asks, already knowing the answer. Not much, Marcus replies, his eyes narrowing with steely resolve. But we're not backing down, not now. The ship accelerates, the engines straining against the pull of the trap, but the trajectory is wrong. Marcus knows they won't make it if they don't take action now. We need to get to the rear thrusters, he orders, his voice urgent. Callie doesn't hesitate. I'll go, she says, already moving toward the door. Marcus grabs her arm before she can leave. No, I need you here, he says, his voice softer. We need to work together on this. Callie looks into his eyes, her face set in a determined expression. We'll do this together, she says firmly, squeezing his hand before heading toward the rear controls. Marcus watches her go, feeling a sense of gratitude and responsibility. As the ship nears the heart of the trap, every second counts. They have no more time for mistakes. As the ship races toward the heart of the trap, Marcus feels the weight of his decisions weighing on him. He knows this is his fault. He was the one who brought them here. The betrayer is closing in fast. It's now or never, Marcus mutters, more to himself than anyone else. Callie glances at him from across the cockpit, her eyes hard. We're ready, she says simply, her voice steady. Marcus nods, pressing a final button on the console. Engaging emergency thrusters. The ship lurches violently, the force of the maneuver throwing both of them against their seats. The alarms blare louder, but Marcus doesn't flinch. We're not dying today, he says, his voice low but filled with unyielding resolve. As the ship shoots forward, Marcus's heart pounds in his chest. This is it. They're either going to survive, or they're going to fall. The ship plunges deeper into the unknown, the systems now stabilizing after the last harrowing escape. The tension on the bridge is thick. Marcus stands at the helm, staring at the screen with a mixture of dread and determination. I should have seen this coming, he mutters, running a hand through his hair. The betrayer never plays fair. Callie steps up beside him, her gaze fixed on the tactical readout. There's something wrong. The system's being overridden remotely. Marcus clenches his fists. He's toying with us, drawing us in. As the silence between them deepens, the reality of their situation weighs heavily. The betrayal that once hurt now feels like an unrelenting storm. He's not just after the fleet, Marcus continues. He wants me. Callie glances at him, her expression resolute. Then we make sure he doesn't get you. The ship's engines hum as they continue into the vast unknown, with the betrayer's shadow looming ever closer. Marcus paces in the small briefing room, his mind racing. I've been a fool, he admits, his voice barely above a whisper. I let him in, trusted him like a brother. Callie watches him from across the table, her arms crossed. What are you saying, Marcus? She asks, her voice soft but firm. Marcus stops pacing and faces her. The betrayer was never an ally, he says. He was always waiting for the right moment. The silence between them deepens. You knew him better than anyone, Callie continues. How did you not see this? Marcus exhales sharply. I wasn't thinking straight. I thought I could change him. He walks to the window, staring out into the infinite blackness. Now we're all paying the price. The weight of his confession hangs heavy, but there's no time for regret. The countdown to the next move begins, and Marcus knows they have no choice but to keep moving forward. Suddenly, the ship shudders again, and the alarms blare. The lights flash red, signaling a new threat. Marcus rushes to the console. It's him, he mutters, barely believing the words. Callie stands beside him, her face tight with anxiety. What now? She demands. He's activated the trap, Marcus says, his voice grim. We're in the middle of a minefield, and it's not a mistake. He's baiting us. Callie's eyes widen as she scans the screen. How do we get out? Marcus doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulls up the map of the area. We can't go around it, he says. We'll have to go through. He clenches his jaw. And we're not just getting out of here alive. We need to make sure he doesn't walk away from this either. The tension is thick. Every second that passes brings them closer to the explosive confrontation that awaits. The ship lurches forward as they speed toward the minefield, the engines roaring in protest. Marcus grips the control panel, sweat dripping from his brow. Hold on, he shouts, his voice strained. Callie's hands are clenched into fists as she stares at the screen, the proximity of the mines growing dangerously close. There's no time to calculate a safe route, she says, panic creeping into her voice. We're too close. Marcus grits his teeth, his mind racing. We can do this, he says, his voice low but full of conviction. He pulls the ship into a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding the first mine. The ship shudders as the next explosion rocks them, but they manage to dodge it. We're not out yet, Marcus warns. Keep your eyes on the prize. The adrenaline in the air is palpable as the ship hurtles through the minefield, each second a breath away from disaster. The ship finally bursts through the minefield, engines straining as it breaks free of the deadly trap. The alarms stop blaring, but the damage is done. Marcus slumps in his seat, exhausted but alive. Callie looks at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of relief and disbelief. That was too close, she says, her voice shaky. Marcus nods but doesn't speak immediately. He's too focused on the next steps. We've escaped the minefield, he says, his voice steady once again. But we're not out of the woods. The betrayer is still out there, and he's going to make sure we don't survive the next round. Callie meets his gaze, her eyes hardening with resolve. Then we make sure he doesn't get the chance to finish what he started. Marcus turns back to the console, setting their course for the final confrontation, knowing that the real battle is only just beginning. The ship's sensors blare a warning, and Marcus Steele's hands move swiftly across the control console, his brow furrowed in concentration. We're running out of time, he mutters, eyes darting from one readout to another. Callie stands beside him, her face tense as she watches the incoming data. He's catching up, she says, her voice cold. Marcus nods. We won't outrun him. This is it. His voice cracks slightly, but he regains his composure. Prepare the crew. We fight. The room falls silent As Marcus grips the armrests of his seat, the weight of leadership crushing him. The betrayer's ship looms large on their tactical screen, its weapons systems charging. Callie turns to face the crew, her voice steady. "This is what we've been training for. We hold nothing back." Marcus closes his eyes briefly, knowing the final confrontation is inevitable. There's no turning back now. As the enemy ship approaches, Marcus takes a deep breath. "We can't just survive," he says, looking at the crew gathered around him. "We need to end this." The crew members nod, the weight of his words settling in. Callie moves closer to Marcus, her voice low but firm. "We've been pushed to the edge, Marcus, but we still have the upper hand." She points to the weapons systems display, showing their final assets. Marcus turns back to the tactical screen. "If we fail, it's not just the ship that's lost. We lose everything." He looks at Callie, his voice softening for a moment. "I couldn't live with that." Callie places a hand on his shoulder. "Then we fight until the end." The ship hums as its weapons systems activate, the anticipation building to a breaking point. The crew braces themselves, knowing what lies ahead. The ship lurches forward as Marcus activates the primary weapons system. The sound of energy coursing through the ship fills the room. "Weapons are ready," he says, his voice steady but filled with tension. Callie checks the ship's defense systems, her eyes scanning the readouts. "We're not going to get another chance like this," she warns. Marcus nods, his grip tightening on the control panel. "It's now or never." He turns to face the crew. "This is for everyone we've lost, for the fleet, for everything we fought for." The crew members exchange solemn nods, their faces steeled for the final confrontation. The ship's engines roar as they charge headfirst into battle. The tension is unbearable, but the crew knows this is their last shot. They push forward, together, as one. The battle rages as laser fire streaks across the void, narrowly missing their ship. Marcus maneuvers the ship, expertly avoiding the enemy's deadly attacks. "Hold on," he shouts, steering the ship into a sharp dive. Callie grips the seat, her eyes never leaving the screens. "We can't take much more of this," she yells over the din of alarms. "We need to hit them now." Marcus clenches his jaw. One more shot. The ship rocks violently as they pass under the enemy's weapon arc, and Marcus makes a final, calculated move. The ship's weapons fire, lighting up the darkness of space. For a moment, the chaos pauses. Then, the enemy ship erupts in a massive explosion. Silence follows, the only sound, the hum of their ship's systems as they drift in the aftermath of the battle. The enemy ship bursts into flames, disintegrating in a fiery explosion. The crew stares in stunned silence, the realization of their victory sinking in. "We did it," Callie says, her voice quiet but full of relief. Marcus lets out a long breath, his body slumping slightly from the tension. "It's over," he says, his voice hoarse. The quiet that follows feels almost unnatural after the chaos of the battle. Callie turns to him, a small smile breaking through her otherwise stoic expression. "We made it through," she says, her tone filled with gratitude and exhaustion. Marcus looks around at the crew, all of them battered but standing. "We all did," he replies. "They've survived the impossible," but as the stars fill the view outside the ship, Marcus knows this victory is only the beginning. The galaxy still holds countless challenges, and they will face them together. The ship drifts through the aftermath of battle, a heavy silence that hangs in the air. Marcus Steele stands at the control panel, his expression numb. "We survived, but at what cost?" he mutters, staring out into the void. Callie enters behind him, her eyes tired but resolute. "We lost more than just crew members," she replies, her voice steady. "But we still have the chance to do what's right." Marcus doesn't turn to face her. "I thought I could change him. The betrayer. He was my responsibility." Callie places a hand on his shoulder, her touch comforting yet firm. "You can't change the past, Marcus, but you can change the future." Marcus finally turns to face her, his eyes dark with the weight of leadership. Then we move forward, together. The crew is still silent, but there's a sense of resolution in the air. The battle is over, but the war continues. As the crew regroups, Marcus takes a moment to breathe. "We need to figure out what comes next," he says, his voice quieter now, filled with uncertainty. Callie looks at him, her eyes unwavering. "We rebuild, we heal. But we also prepare for what's ahead." The tension in Marcus' shoulders eases slightly, but the weight of his decision still lingers. "I never thought I'd be the one leading us after everything," he admits, his voice tinged with self-doubt. Callie steps forward, offering a reassuring smile. "You're the leader we need, Marcus. The one we've always needed." Marcus looks around at the crew, their faces filled with trust and camaraderie. "Then let's move forward. Together." There's a sense of unity in the room, even in the face of the unknown. It's not just survival anymore. It's about redemption. As the ship's systems come back online, the crew begins to make their preparations. Marcus stands by the window, looking out at the stars, his mind lost in thought. "We've lost so much," he says softly. "But we're still here." Callie joins him, her eyes following his gaze. "We've also gained something," she says. "Hope." Marcus nods slowly, his eyes fixed on the distant stars. "I don't know what the future holds, but I'm not walking away from it." The room behind them fills with the sound of the crew preparing for their next steps, but Marcus and Callie remain in quiet reflection. They've come through the fire, and now they're ready to rebuild. The war isn't over, but they've found their strength again. The ship's crew gathers in the common area, the mood solemn but determined. "We've been through hell," Marcus begins, standing at the front, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "But we've come out the other side." Callie stands beside him, her eyes scanning the crew. "We've lost many, but we're still here, and that's something." Marcus pauses, looking at the faces of his crew, the people who have become family. "We fight for each other. We fight for what's left of this galaxy." The crew responds with quiet nods, their spirits rekindled. Marcus feels a weight lift from his chest. It's not over, but we'll face it together. The crew breaks into action, a renewed sense of purpose filling the room as they prepare for the next phase of their journey. As the ship begins its journey to a new destination, Marcus stands at the helm, looking out at the stars ahead. "This is only the beginning," he says, his voice soft but filled with conviction. "We've been through the worst, but we'll keep going." Callie steps up beside him, her expression filled with quiet optimism. "We're not alone, Marcus," she says. "And we never will be." The crew members are hard at work, each one contributing to the mission ahead. Marcus looks at Callie, his face filled with a mixture of gratitude and resolve. "Together," he repeats. "Together." The ship moves forward, leaving behind the ashes of the past, heading toward a future full of uncertainty, but also full of hope. The ship hurtles toward an unknown destination, the hum of its engines steady and constant. Marcus Steele stands at the control panel, eyes focused on the navigational readout. "We're approaching the rendezvous point," he announces. Callie moves to his side, her expression neutral but alert. "We still don't know what's waiting for us out there," she says, her voice cautious. Marcus nods. "We don't know, but we're ready." The silence stretches between them before Marcus turns to face her, his expression thoughtful. "This isn't just about survival anymore, Callie. It's about rebuilding what was lost." Callie looks at him, her gaze unwavering. "And we will, Marcus, together." The ship continues its journey, the uncertainty of what lies ahead both daunting and exhilarating. The ship enters a sector of space previously thought to be a dead zone. Marcus feels a sense of foreboding settle over him. "This doesn't feel right," he murmurs, his voice low. Callie looks out the window, her face hardening. "Something's off," she agrees. "We're not alone here." The sensors flare up, and the ship suddenly jolts, as if struck by an unseen force. "What the hell?" Marcus exclaims, gripping the control panel. "It's him," Callie says, her voice filled with certainty. "The betrayer. He's not finished yet." Marcus stands tall, eyes narrowed in determination. "Then let's finish this. For good." The crew braces themselves as the ship prepares for another battle, but this time, they're not just fighting for survival. They're fighting for redemption. The betrayer's ship appears on the radar, its silhouette cutting through the darkness like a predator closing in on its prey. "He's right on top of us," Marcus says, his voice strained but calm. Callie checks the weapons systems, her hands moving with practiced precision. "We're not running anymore," she says. "We're fighting." Marcus looks at her, his gaze intense. "We're ready for this," he affirms. The crew takes their positions, their faces set with unwavering determination. "We fought through hell to get here," Marcus continues. "We're not backing down now." The engines roar as the ship accelerates toward the enemy, the final battle awaiting them. Tension is unbearable, but their resolve is unshakable. The two ships engage in a fierce battle, weapons fire lighting up the void. Marcus maneuvers their ship with precision, dodging blasts and returning fire. "Keep it steady," he shouts, his voice commanding. Callie aims the weapons with pinpoint accuracy, the blasts hitting the enemy ship with devastating force. "We're breaking through," she yells, her voice filled with fierce triumph. Marcus keeps the ship on course, his face a mask of concentration. "This ends now," he mutters under his breath. The ship shudders as the final blow hits, and the betrayer's ship erupts in a fiery explosion. Silence follows, the battlefield now empty. The crew sits in stunned silence, their eyes wide in disbelief. The ship drifts through the silence, the remnants of the final battle still lingering in the air. Marcus stands at the helm, his hands resting lightly on the controls. "It's over," he says, his voice heavy. Callie steps up beside him, her eyes filled with quiet triumph. "We did it," she says, her voice soft. Marcus nods, but his face is solemn. "We've lost so much, but we've also gained something." He looks at Callie, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Hope." Callie meets his gaze, her expression steady. "And a future." The ship moves forward, leaving the past behind. The journey isn't over, but they've found a new path, together. The ship drifts in the quiet aftermath of the final battle. Marcus Steele stands at the helm, gazing out at the stars. The weight of everything he's endured presses down on him. "This was never the path I wanted," he says softly, his voice distant. Callie stands beside him, her gaze steady, her hand resting lightly on the console. "But it's the path we chose, Marcus," she replies. "We did what was necessary." Marcus turns to face her, his expression somber yet resolute. "It doesn't feel like enough," he admits. "So many are gone." Callie looks at him, her eyes filled with understanding. "We didn't just fight for survival, Marcus, we fought for the future." He nods slowly, his face softening with the realization. The future. Maybe it's time to stop looking back. He takes a deep breath, his shoulders relaxing. We move forward now. The ship continues its journey, the stars ahead now symbolizing hope. In the common area, the crew is gathered, each person deep in thought. The silence is broken by Marcus as he addresses them for the first time since the battle. "We've made it through the storm," he says, his voice steady. "But the work isn't over." The crew looks up, their eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. "We've lost people. We've lost time, but we've gained something too." Marcus pauses, letting the weight of his words settle in. "We're alive, and we're stronger for it." Callie steps forward, her voice unwavering. "This is just the beginning," she says. "We rebuild, we forge a new path together." The crew exchanges determined glances, the energy in the room shifting from grief to hope. Marcus stands tall, his gaze firm. "Let's make sure we don't forget who we are and what we stand for." Later, as the crew works together to repair the ship, Marcus walks through the corridors, passing by the engineers and technicians who are tirelessly fixing systems. He pauses, observing the determination on their faces. Callie approaches from behind, her steps quiet but sure. "They're working hard," she says, watching the crew with a proud smile. "They're rebuilding just like us." Marcus looks around, his gaze softening. I've seen what people are capable of when they have no other choice, he says. But this is different. This is hope. Callie looks at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of admiration and understanding. We didn't just fight for survival, Marcus. We fought for a future where we could thrive. Marcus nods, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. And we will. Together. As Marcus and Callie stand on the observation deck, the stars twinkle before them, vast and endless. Marcus takes a deep breath, letting the serenity of space wash over him. I never thought I'd find peace out here, he says, his voice low. Callie stands beside him, her eyes searching the stars. Peace doesn't always come the way we expect, she replies. But sometimes it's found in the quiet after the storm. Marcus turns to her, his expression thoughtful. We've been through so much, he says, his voice filled with a mix of awe and relief. But we've made it, and that means something. Callie meets his gaze, her eyes steady and filled with confidence. We're still here, Marcus, and that's the most important thing. They stand together, looking out at the stars, ready for whatever comes next. The crew is gathered in the common area once again, this time celebrating their survival and the journey ahead. Marcus stands at the front, raising a glass to his crew. To those we've lost, and to those who are still here. We've made it through the storm, he says, his voice steady and strong. Callie raises her glass beside him, her eyes shining with pride. We fight for each other, she adds, her voice firm. And we'll keep fighting, no matter what comes next. The crew raises their glasses, their faces filled with a sense of unity and strength. Marcus takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of the journey ahead but also the warmth of the bond they've formed. This is just the beginning, he says. Together we'll rebuild what was lost and create something new. A future. The crew cheers, their voices filled with hope and determination.